Nabil. I have been at Frappe for a significant time. So I have worked on apps like healthcare, Frappe HR, ERP Next in the past. Currently, I'm working on an app builder with the Frappe framework, which is called Frappe Studio. Uh, so I had presented a glimpse of it in the annual Frappeverse conference held in India in October last year. And today I'm going to share some developments in it with the help of an app that we'll see. Um, so for those of you who don't know, Frappe Studio is an app builder based on top of the Frappe framework using Frappe UI components, and it gives you a flexibility to be a composition tool like Frappe Builder. Um, so let's create a newsletter app, and see how the features help us to build the app. So I'll create a new app from here. It's called Brew Letter. Excuse my naming, I know it's not great. Naming is hard. Brew because coffee. So we'll start with app building. We'll add some pages. So basically this is a newsletter app, so it will have a list of all your newsletters, a list of subscribers, and some view to compose your newsletter, right? So there are 3 pages. And you can configure the routing for the pages from your app builder. Let's start by building the lists. So first we'll build a newsletter list. We'll drop a container and adjust some styles. Make this a flex box as a containing component for all our other components. And we'll add a sidebar component to this. So I'll edit the menu items in my sidebar. Currently it's newsletters and subscribers. So on the right hand side, we'll have another container which will house our header and the actual list. So we can build a header with a div. We can resize this, convert this to flex, add some shadow. So I added a text block for adding the title for the page. And the other thing we'll need is a primary button for the list, right? To create a new record from here. So we'll add some padding to make it look cleaner. Now you can go to individual components and edit the component props for these view components. So my title is newsletter for the text block. I can adjust the sizes from here. For the button, I'll have a label changed. I can adjust the variance, theme, and size as per Frappe UI components. And then I'll grab a list view, right? So you will have some initial data when you drag components on the canvas, so that till you connect the data, you at least have some preview of it. So with this our first page is ready, which is the newsletter list. Now in view, there is a concept of props and slots. So basically slots let you customize parts of the component. So for example, in this, the header says Frappe, but I want to customize the header of the sidebar, right? So I can click on the component, and I have available slots over here, and I see a placeholder for my header. So I can go ahead and drag other components into the slot to customize it. Or another option is directly editing the slot. So you can add view code here, which will get dynamically rendered. So I see my app logo now here. So now we build the basic layout. Let's connect data. So I have a newsletter doc type within the framework. There are certain fields like subject, content, status, and scheduling details. So for this data to be available in the front end, First, I'll adjust my columns in the list view and add a new data source. So I'll call this newsletters because that's what we are fetching from the backend. I'll select the doc type. I'll select all the fields that I require. In this case, I don't want to filter out anything or transform the results coming from the backend. So this is the object browser that I see. All the data from your backend is visible. And now I can wire the dynamic data to the list view component. So you see we have newsletters over here. Now I've created all this for one page, and the layout is almost going to be similar for the subscriber list. So I don't want to do it all over again. I can just duplicate the page and change the data source there from newsletters to subscribers. Again, adding the data source, mapping the columns, linking the data to the list, and I have my subscriber list ready. This is the second view. Similarly, I have the third view, which is the individual newsletter component. So in this case, I won't have the list view. I just added two buttons. One is the primary button for saving, and other is for sending the newsletter out. We'll come to composing the newsletter in a bit. And something is different in this case. So this component will show up based on dynamic URL that you have. So you will have the newsletter ID in your URL. So while fetching the data source, we can enable dynamically fetch document using filters. And I set the ID equal to route.params.id, which comes from my routing parameters in Vue. So now coming to forms. So newsletter is a doc type in the backend, and I want all the fields mapped in the front end as well. But if we just create another form component, it will be very similar to desk. So I want to have the flexibility of adding fields from any form into some containing layout. So I have this container over here. I don't want to remember all the fields that I have to add from the backend. So what I can do is I can go ahead and right click and add fields from a doc type. So I select the doc type, select all the fields that I need, and Studio will map my backend fields to Vue or Frappe UI components in the front end. You can change whatever you want over here if you don't like the predefined stuff. And once I do that, I get all my fields over here. So I don't have to individually drag and drop based on my schema in the backend. Other things we would need is when you're building an app, you need variables and controlling the components in your app, right? So let's say, for example, in this layout, there is a checkbox for schedule sending the email or newsletter at a given time. And you have to set the date time field based on that. So I only want to show the date time field when my checkbox is checked. For that, I can go ahead and add a variable for schedule the sending, and it will be a Boolean variable defaulted to false. Now I want to bind this variable with my form control. So whenever the user toggles it, my variable also updates. So I can click this and link it to any variable, in this case the one that we just created. And now I can set a visibility condition on the second component. So it will only be visible when schedule sending is true. So once I publish this, the visibility is controlled through variables. So now we built the form, we added variables. Now we want to insert the newsletter record into the backend. So for that, I have different variables based on the form that I have added. And they are wired with my properties for every control. So now I want to do this when I click on the save button. So I add an event on the click action to insert a document. select the doc type, and I'll map my field and variable field on the database with the variable on the front end. And I can add some success message and error message over here that will show up when my record gets inserted successfully or it fails. So let's publish this. I set some subject for the newsletter. I add content, and you can see a preview of the Markdown editor right beside this. And when I click on save, my newsletter gets saved, and you can find it in the document in the backend. So you didn't have to write any code for this. You just have to do configurations to map the fields and variables from the front end. Other things are API calls on events. So we did the saving, but there are other things like sending the newsletter. So I can call any backend API and link it to buttons, click events. Similarly, wire success and failure messages over here. And you could also have more detailed UI. Like for example, here I want to have the newsletter matrix. So I've added some other things like the badge on top, which shows you the status of the newsletter, whether it's sent or not, and some other things like the total views, the view rate, and total recipients of the newsletter. So this is all wired from the backend. You can see the dynamic data linking here. Yeah, so this is how it can look. So the point is you can build your forms freely. It won't look the same as it looks in the desk. You can have fields from multiple forms in the same layout, do actions, insert records from the front end via actions, which is not currently possible in the desk. So Studio is trying to remove the friction that we need, that we face currently, to build more intuitive UIs that our new products have. That's it. Thank you.